Today I want to go over project 7. For project 7, I'm asking you to define a class for humans. Humans have the following attributes: age, first name, last name, date of birth, social security number, and income. So I want to define a class. I start by saying class humans. Inside my class, I have two different parts. One of them is private, one of them is public. For the private part, I will include the attributes, which, if we look at the project requirement, the attributes are age, first name, last name, date of birth. So I define age, which is an integer, first name, which is a string, last name, which is another string. We have date of birth, which is string. So I say date of birth, which is a string. And then social security number is integer. We have income, which income is also integer. I define all of my variables in the private part because they're private. In the public part of my class, I can define the functions. It says add the following inline member functions: eat, sleep, walk, and talk. So I can define a function here named eat, which may function, my function will display human as eating. The return type for eat will be void because it's not returning anything. I have another function named sleep. I say void sleep. I display human is sleeping. The return type for sleep is void. It means it's not returning anything. I have another function walk. I say void walk. Human is walking. I have another function, which is talk. This will display human is talking. I have defined the functions that were required. So question is asking to add the following mutator functions: set age, set name, set first name. I want to add the setters for these attributes. I put the setters inside the public area. I start by defining the setter for age. I can say void set age and a, and age becomes a. I have another void function set ss, which takes integer s, and ss becomes s, which ss is the social security number. I have integer income, which I create void set income. It takes integer I, and income becomes I. I want to define the setters for first name, last name, and date of birth. I start by creating void set first name, which takes a string of n and puts n inside name. I have first name here, so I make this one fn, and here I put first name. I had another void set last name, which takes a string of ln, and this set last name will put ln inside last name. I have the setters for age, SS, income, first name, last name, and date. I need the date of birth. So I create another setter, void set date of birth, which this setter will set the date of birth, which date of birth is date of birth equal to, I pass an integer. What data type for the date of data string? I pass a string db, and I put db inside data of birth. So I'm setting first name, last name, date of birth. I have the setters for all of them. The project is asking you to add the following accesses, which are also called the getters. I want to start with defining the get age, which gets the age. I can say int get age return age. I have another getter for SS. I can say int get SS return SS. So I want to get the income. So I type int get income. Get income returns income. I want to create the getters for first name, last name, and date of birth. So first name, last name, and date of birth are strings. I can say string get first name. I return first name. I have another string get last name, which returns the last name. I have the get name, get first name, get last name. I define another getter, which is a get date of birth. Which returns the date of birth. So I have defined all of my getters. I have defined my setters. For the getters, I can take out these underlines to make it more readable. The project is asking you to create a function print, which prints first name, last name, age, and date of birth. I create another function, print. This function will print If I say cout, first name, let's try this. In my main, I want to create an instance of this class. When you have a class of humans, we can start by saying human 1. I can start by saying humans 1. This will create an instance of humans. If I try to define the first print like this, and I say 1.print, and I run it, you can see that it doesn't print anything. Now I want to go back to my program. Before everything, I want to create a constructor here. So constructor is a special member function that is inside the public area. In the public area, I create a constructor. Constructor has the same name with the class. Default constructor doesn't take any arguments. So by putting humans there, I have defined a default constructor. Inside my default constructor, I want to set age to 1, SS to 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to set income to 2134. I want to set the first name to Mehdi. I want to set the last name to Peyravi. I want to set date of birth to October 10, 1981. Default constructor is a special member function of the class that either doesn't take any argument, or if it does take arguments, they all have default values. When I say humans 1, I have created an instance of my class using the default constructor. If I call the print function and I look at the output, you can see that it displays my name. Now inside the print function, I want to print all of them. It means I want to print first name, last name, and date of birth. So I go back here and I say last name and date of birth. I'm displaying first name, last name, and date of birth. So I try my program again and I run it. I go back to my output. After each one, I put end L. And I run it again. You can see that my output is displaying my first name, my last name, and my date of birth. Let's take a look at the requirement. The project requirement is saying to create an instance of human and call all the sitters and getters, then call the print function. I go back to my class. I have all the sitters and getters. I have a default constructor I start by calling the sets H. I set the H to 20. I say one dot set date of birth is 10/10/2000. I call the set first name and I name the first name Ashley. I call the set last name and I set the last name to LO. I call the setter for, I have the first name, last name, income. I make income 1000. I added my setters and then I call the print function. Let's try this code. It's displaying Ashley load 10/10/2000. In this example, I showed you guys how you can create a class, how you can define a class, and then how we can add a default constructor to the class, how we can define different functions inside the class, and then how we can add the setters and getters. In the project requirements, I have asked you to initialize the data members of the class using data member initialization. So let's take a look at data member initialization. We have different variables here. That one of them is age. I can say age is equal to 24. Social security number is equal to 444. Income is equal to 3000. I can say first name is equal to Jack. Last name is equal to Joe. And date of birth is equal to 11111. So this is what we call a data member initialization. If I initialize the data members like this, and I create an instance of the class, and I take out the getters and setters, if I take out the setters, and I run my program, if you take a look at the output, you can see it displays Mehdi Payrabi 10/10/1981. Because I do have a default constructor here that sets Mehdi Payrabi. But for example, if I take out the default constructor and I run my program and I go to my output, you can see that the object that we have now is Jack, Joe, and 111111. This is data member initialization, which means when you create an object of the class, by default, name becomes Jack, last name is Joe, and date of birth is 111111. So I just want to explain this code briefly. In this example here, we do have a class, which the class is humans. The private attributes are the attributes of the class, which we call it state of the class. The default constructor is a special member function of the class that has the same name of the class. It doesn't have a return type. It's in the public area. What happens is when you create an instance of the class, the default constructor runs. So in this example here, when I say humans1, the default constructor runs and it will set the attribute of the class to this. You could add more constructors to your class. So in this example, this class has a default constructor. You could add more constructors to your class. If I copy this constructor and I paste it here, and I put int a, int s, int I, string fn, and then string ln, and then string db. I have created another constructor which can set the age to A, SS to S, income to I, first name to F, and last name to LN, and date of birth to DB. Now I have two different constructors. This is the default constructor, and this is my other constructor. If I want to use the default constructor, I can type humans1. But if I want to use my other constructor, I can say humans2. But to use the other constructor, I need to pass 3 integers and 3 strings. So I start by 1, 2, and 3, and A, B, and C. I do have 3 integers and 3 strings here. So if I call the print function here, and I call it on 2, if I look at my output, it displays A, B, and C. Because in this example, I'm using my other constructor, which the other constructor is setting the values by passing them from here. So this example, this line of code is using the default constructor. And this other line is using my other constructor, which is in this example, you can see I have 2 different constructors. So all the attributes, they go in the private area. All the functions are in the public area. When they're private, it means they're only accessible within the class. So when these are public, they're accessible also outside of the class. I want you guys to work on this project.